On this episode of Locked On Angels, Yoán Moncada signed with the Angels. So what does that mean? What does it mean for the infield, for Rendon, and is Moncada any good? Let's chat about it. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back to 5 days a week. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, we're looking to get to 10K by opening day. And right now we're almost at 9K. So you're helping us get there. If you're on the audio side, jump over to the video side and just hit that subscribe button. Even if you're not watching on the video side, it helps us. Let's get to 10K by opening day. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel is offering to new customers $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started.
Happy Monday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're back to 5 days a week. Pitchers and catchers report this week. It's officially baseball season. As soon as that clock hit 0 last night, Michael, on the game, I tweeted baseball season. You knew I had to. It's tradition. I mean, at this point, and I wasn't the only one. Everybody's tweeting it's baseball season, and that's how we all feel. We're all excited. There's always hope springs eternal at the beginning of spring training.
Yep.
And so I'm sure we'll be sad and depressed here at some point during the season, but not right now, especially because, Mike, I got another one of my GM picks last week. And what's funny is we talked about him briefly on our Friday episode, but that was before the signing took place, recorded before, I should say. Yoán Moncada is a Halo. And so we're going to talk about what that means, what he brings to the team, what happened with that White Sox core that was really good for a few years.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to start out with what it means for him to be on this team. What does it mean for Anthony Rendon as well? Mike, why don't you get into the details?
Yeah, 1 year, $5 million for Moncada. Now, the story goes, rumor mill, Ken Rosenthal specifically said that the Astros and the Tigers were in on Moncada.
I saw the Cubs too.
And the Cubs were a part of that as well.
No, he's a bottom basement dweller, bargain bin, trash bin. Only the Angels wanted him. I just had to get that out of my system.
That was good.
Because it wasn't
very
true.
Good. Very good. It's exactly how they sound. Now, that's the reason why it's a 1 year, $5 million deal. Now, other rumors are that he was waiting until Bregman would sign to kind of set the market. But because the Halos came with $5 million, 1 year at $5 million, a bigger number than what other teams were offering, it's why this deal got done. It does push the Angels' overall payroll to approximately $193 million. That's calculated by Roster Resource. They're at $210 right now in the luxury tax commitments, a little more than $30 million below the lowest threshold. Johnny, you and I have talked often on this show about how the Halos need to go a little bit more, maybe with money or with years, to get a player. And it sounds like they went a little bit more with money. So the question before we go to get into the details is this the type of player that they would have to go, or they should have gone with a little bit more money?
Look, you had to go with a little bit more money to get anybody to come to the Angels, even Yoán Moncada, who has been hurt over the last couple of seasons. I wanted him as depth, and this is perfect depth. This is major league depth. It's quality depth. He's off the bench, and he'll probably displace Rendon. We'll get into that conversation in a second. But I say all that because you have to give him the $5 million over the, I think it was $3 million with the Cubs.
Yeah.
And that's just the circumstances of it, Mike. Now, is this the player you go above and beyond for? No, but you also have to realize everybody that's good went to other teams, like Corbin Burnes to the Diamondbacks for the reasons that he shared about family and location and being there and whatnot. And it's cheaper in the long run because he doesn't get taxed as much. Those are the things that the Angels are up against. Plus, their reputation is not great. And so to have a guy like Yoán Moncada, who I argued back on my GM episode back in November, I think it was, the fact is he needs a bounce back season. This is a perfect place for him to land and to get that infielder that they've been needing. And I think this is a really great choice because when he's healthy, he's been good. That's all that's been a knock against him in the last couple of years, is just hasn't been on the field. And I understand people say, well, Rendon hasn't been on the field either. Right. So that's why you go out and get a Moncada, so that you can displace that Rendon nonsense. Moncada's injuries have not been like Rendon style injuries. They've been very, very different to the way he's been hurt. So all that to say, you have to go above and beyond. If there was competition from the Astros, the Tigers, the Cubs, then give him the extra $2 million. $8 million is a one WAR player? $8 million is worth like one WAR. And so if you get one WAR out of Moncada for $5 million, you've made bank. You've got him at a discount at that point.
Now, he's somebody who has a pretty good history in his career, and we're going to talk about him and a few other White Sox players in our third segment. John, he earned some down-ballot MVP support in 2019 because he slashed .315, .367, and a .548 slugging with a career-high 25 home runs and a .915 OPS. And the White Sox, they established him as one of their core players. They gave him a lot of money and a lot of years. However, it just didn't work out for him. Now, he's 29. He only played 12 games last season. He missed almost the entire season because of a left adductor. Is that how I say it? Adductor strain? Am I saying that right?
Abductor.
Oh, it's my spelling. That's why, John, you're the English teacher.
That's why I'm here.
You got the degree. So he got hurt on April 9th, didn't return until September, and then the White Sox declined his $25 million option, and they gave him $5 million as a buyout. And injuries followed him in the offseason. So this is another question about Moncada. He was hurt while playing for Cuba in the international tournament in November, fouled a ball off of his foot in December. We've heard that before, right? Ending his time in the Puerto Rican League. He's only played 208 games over the last 3 years. So, John, does that concern you? And is this another injured player on an already often injured team?
It's not a $38 million injured player. It's a $5 million guy that you signed to play off the bench, that when he's there, he's going to be productive. And when he's not there, then you can turn to your JD Davis or Tim Anderson or what have you, right? Everybody that was concerned about those guys being on the opening day roster. Well, I can tell you right now that this offsets that, certainly, because now you have Rendon, Rengifo, Moncada, Kevin Newman. You have Shawnuel over at first. They needed an infielder. He can play third base. He's played second in the past, not great, much better third baseman, especially in recent years. But to me, I'm not concerned about time or lack of time that he puts in. It's $5 million. And for any major league team, that's a drop in the bucket. So this doesn't really concern me as far as the injuries go. And again, there's more positives to this, or I should say it's a no risk sort of move, especially when you do have depth behind it, like JD Davis and Tim Anderson, guys who have been in the major leagues before, and maybe they won't be good, but there's a big difference between having somebody like a JD Davis who has been in the majors, has had success. Same with Tim Anderson. I know we can pile on him because his last year was terrible, and he's just not been the same since all of the personal issues and getting punched in the face by Ramirez. And so I say all that because there is a wide gap between guys who have been there and done that before versus, hey, we're going to call up, Steve Bottom Drawers. I don't know, like something like that. This is a stupid name, but that's the kind of stupid thing that we do. And so rather than calling up a minor leaguer who's had 31 career plate appearances in the majors, like a Jack Lopez, you have somebody who's been there before, has experience. And Moncada has been good. And he's somebody, like I said, I wanted off the bench because he's been good. He's a switch hitter. He can hit from both sides of the plate pretty evenly. And so I'm not concerned about this in the slightest. And to me, it just offsets things until Zach Neto comes back, which may be sooner than we think because based on what we've seen. But at the same time, I would much rather have Moncada starting at third base over Anthony Rendon at this point, unless Rendon goes on a tear in spring training somehow, but we all know that that's not going to happen.
Steve Bottom Drawer sounds like a player on those old Ken Griffey Jr. games when they didn't have the names of the players, right?
The rights to the players, so they had to make up everything.
It was Ken Griffey Jr. and everybody else.
Yeah, can I tell you guys what my nerd brothers did?
Come on.
Mike and Jeff, our brother between us, literally went through every member of every roster and changed the names of who they were, the fake names, to who they were supposed to be.
Yep.
Like literally, and this is on the Super Nintendo, so you had to push up to go up the alphabet and down, and then next and do it again. I was like, guys, are you ever going to play the game, or are you just going to do this name thing?
You got to have the right players first. You got to do that, right? Now, you mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned it, that Moncada has some flexibility. And he's played 526 career games at third base, 203 games at second base. But it's the third base position that we want to focus on. And you mentioned Rendon. John, do you think that this is a signing that pushes Rendon? Does this affirm Perry's position that Anthony's got to earn his spot?
Well, yeah, at this point. I mean, I don't know if it affirms it, but at the same time, it certainly tells us that is more truthful than it appeared for the entire offseason, which was with Neto hurt. It's like, well, you guys are pretty much planning on having Rendon at third, aren't you?
Right.
And so this displaces that notion. And look, I love the idea of Christian Moore being on the opening day roster. And I know a lot of our everydayers like that too. The fact is, he's a huge unknown. Right. He's never faced major league pitching.
Right.
We'll get a look at that in spring training, and then they could take a chance on him and bring him up, or even have him on the opening day roster. But I what I'm trying to say is, you just can't go into the season banking on that.
Yeah.
I think going into the season, banking on Christian Moore at second base being good and ready to face major league pitching is the same as banking on Rendon coming into the season and actually being productive and being healthy and all that stuff. It takes the same amount of willpower. It takes the same amount of what if, and you don't want to do that. You want to have some sure things. Moncada is a sure thing, whether he plays, 150 something games or 50 games, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the move, but I understand the irritation or frustration from some Angel fans. And I think it's because there's these high expectations of Bregman is still out there, and how come we're not getting these big players? But what we have to deal with is something that you and I brought up last season that I think has to be repeated. Like, when you're an Angel fan, you root for the team that they are providing for us. And this is the team that they're providing for us. Should they do more? Yes. Could they do more? Yes. But what we got with Moncada is what is best in the world that we live in as Angel fans right now. And so what it does communicate, though, is that they aren't just going to go, well, Neto will come back and then we'll have just Rendon at third base until that time happens. This actually pushes that. So my hope is that Moncada is healthy, and my hope is that he has a great spring training, and my hope is that he's somebody that does push Rendon off of third base and starts their opening day. My struggle, John, is with Ron Washington, because Wash seems to be a guy who tips the cap to those veteran players. And right now, I'd rather have a left-handed 29-year-old Moncada and taking a risk with him than a 30-plus-year-old right-hander who we've taken a risk with the last 4 or 5 years, and let Moncada play third base for a time and then let Rendon kind of move around where we need him to fill in.
I honestly, I understand your notion about Ron likes to tip the cap to the veterans. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay. I don't think that happens with Rendon specifically. I understand that Ron's done that, especially over last season, where he gave Aaron Hicks all that time in the outfield and he just stunk. And I think that there's an influence from Perry Manasian to say, hey, I don't want to see him starting every day, because he's, who cares if we're spending $38 million? He hasn't earned it. Right. I think that's the key point there. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, is Yoán Moncada still good? Did he lose his ability to play? We're going to answer that in our final segment. We'll also talk about what he brings to the Halos in 2025. We'll get into all of that coming right up.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on all of that action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can with staying in the action with FanDuel. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets with a same-game parlay. And I love using FanDuel. I love the live betting feature because every moment of the game, it's exciting, whether it's your team or not your team. And I'm not a huge NBA guy, right? And so I'm just going to bet and have fun watching those players, especially watching like LeBron and Luka play and what they're going to be able to do together. That's going to be exciting. I never miss a chance, and you don't have to miss a chance with FanDuel as well. The app's so easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. And if you're a new customer right now, you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And every dayers, hey, we're still doing a little fundraising for those who've been affected by the California wildfires. In fact, there's a link in the episode description, whether you're watching or listening, to Convoy of Hope. All the proceeds go directly to wildfire relief, not paying contract salaries or anything like that. It's going to help people in need in the many ways that there are needs out there. And if you're interested, you can send us confirmation of your donation, and we'll hook you up with some Super Halo Bros merch. I happen to have one of those shirts on right now, Michael.
Love that shirt.
Catching a fly ball, the two of us.
Yep.
The only problem is that I'm right-handed in that picture, and well, you know, you can't have everything.
You're a southpaw.
Yeah, I'm a southpaw. So anyway, donate to Convoy of Hope. Send us your confirmation on social media, and then we'll put you in a drawing for some Super Halo Bros merch. We'd love to have you help out Convoy of Hope.
All right, Johnny. So what does Moncada bring to the Halos? Well, first, let's talk about the hole that second base and third base was on this team last season. So at second base, they had an average of a 593 OPS, a 71 weighted runs created plus, a -8 in defensive runs saved, -15 outs above average, and a -1.2 Fangraphs WAR.
Woof.
That's awful. And then at third base, a 601 OPS, 72 weighted runs created plus, +2 defensive run saves, a -10 outs above average, and a -0.1 Fangraphs WAR. So that's where they were last year. Moncada obviously can play second and third, more third than anything. Not super great at second base. Now, Locked On Hall of Famer Brent McGuire tweeted this about Moncada on Thursday. He said, from 2019 to 2021, Moncada's 24 to 26 seasons, he played 328 games. He slashed .279, had a .363 on base, and a .464 slugging with a 123 weighted runs created plus, 45 home runs, and a 9.8 Fangraphs WAR. Now, from 2022 to 2024, ages 27 to 29, played in just 208 games, slashed .236, .291 on base, and a .387 slugging, 88 weighted runs created plus, 23 home runs, and a 2.2 WAR. Now, I thought this was interesting. These are the zip projections on Moncada for this season. Now, they're just projections based off of what happened in previous seasons. 94 games is what they're projecting for him. A 1.7 Fangraphs WAR, 249 batting average, 323 on base, and a 392 slugging with a 104 weighted runs created plus, 9 home runs. And Brent tweeted, the Angels would take that kind of production in a hot beat because they were terrible at second and third last year. So, Johnny, is this something that you agree with? Is he better than what we have? And something that I think that is important for you to wrestle through, and you mentioned in the first segment, is this idea of they're not now going from a Zach Neto to a Jack Lopez. They're now going from a Zach Neto to another major league caliber player who, according to the projections, is going to be an average player and not a below average player, which is what they've brought up in seasons past.
Right. That's not to say that he's playing shortstop. What you mean is, you know, if you lose somebody like Neto, you've got to shift the infield around. Obviously, Newman can play it short and Rengifo can play at second. So you needed somebody at third.
Yeah.
It was going to be Rendon or JD Davis type, or maybe even Tim Anderson makes the team, that sort of thing. This is more of a sure thing because this guy has a track record. And even though he's been hurt and the last couple of years haven't been as great, Mike, I'll take a 104 weighted runs created plus, especially because it's league average.
Yeah.
And what have you and I been screaming about? Angels just need to be league average at some of their positions in order to be successful and have success in 2025. And again, this keeps you from going from Neto to Jack Lopez. That's the example we always use. No harm, no foul on Jack Lopez, right? And what I'm trying to say, though, is before he came up with the Angels, he had 31 plate appearances as a major leaguer over his whole career. And it's been mostly in the minor leagues. And look, that's the career trajectory of some of these guys, and that's fine. But that shouldn't be the guy that you put up when you lose Neto and Rengifo. It should be the guy that you get to when you burn through Neto, Rengifo, and Newman, and Moncada, and JD Davis, and Tim Anderson. Then you should get to your Jack Lopez's, right? And so the Angels have just not had the major league depth and the quality that they've had in the past. And so, or I should say not have had in the past. And I think this offsets that. And again, I'll take that slash line. I'll take a 104 weighted runs created plus, because again, it's slightly above league average. And that makes all the difference in the world to this Halos team, especially from the third base position.
Yeah. Now, another Locked On Hall of Famer, Taylor Blake Ward, tweeted that Moncada, excluding his really bad 2022, has been mostly an average or better hitter throughout his career. And the Angels needed a left corner infield depth piece and a left-handed hitter. And Moncada does both of that for the Halos and fills in at a low cost. And then Jared Timms from Talking Halos said he really likes the Moncada deal for the Halos. $5 million for a player who's projected to be a +1 WAR player for them, gives better infield depth than what they have, pushes Rendon a bit. And if you're hoping for a 105 to 110 weighted runs created plus guy, this is the guy. Possibly 15 home runs, someone who can help Wash on the defensive side. Wash can help him also improve on the defensive side. He's somebody that they could possibly trade in July if he's playing really well and the team's not in it. And he gives Christian Moore some more time. The reason why we're sharing what Jared said, what TBW said, and what Brent McGuire said is because these are the guys that were watching this team probably more often than any of us are watching this team. And it can be so easy to get caught up in the narrative of, garbage collecting and trash bin diving and all of that stuff with these players. These are guys that are watching the team, have watched the team over the years. And these are reasonable guys, especially TBW, understands this team. Brent McGuire understands baseball players. Jared Timms understands development. And so I really was encouraged by what I read from these guys. Yes, it's not the big splash that we all long for. But I mean, if we've been an Angel fan in the last at least 10 years, 20 years, you know that's not Artie's MO right now, and him moving for the big splash. This is another piece that if it works out for the Halos, could be a potential really strong player according to these guys, right?
Well, and that's the thing that I think people get hung up on, Mike, is what you just said. If it works out for the Halos, and I think people get hung up on that and say, well, we always have to have a if it works out for them, if this works out, if that works out. That I understand when you're paying Noah Syndergaard, what was it, almost $30 million, and costing yourself a draft pick for 1 year of Noah Syndergaard, right? That I understand. When you're looking at Matt Harvey to come and be the old Matt Harvey and you pay him a ton of money to stink in 2019, that I understand. Moncada, no harm, no foul. And so, yes, there is an element of, you hope that he's healthy. You hope that he's productive. You hope that he can be league average or a little bit better. I totally get that. So every guy has a hope attached to them. But I think in the past we've been burned by the Syndergaards. Not that Syndergaard was bad. I just don't think he was worth the money and the draft pick for 1 year. Right. And I know they made some trades and everything. But all I'm saying is we have hung our hats on, well, we hope that they're healthy, and people get hung up on that. And I totally get it. But in the case of a Moncada, it's $5 million.
Yeah.
And like you said, if he's good, trade him away. As long as Anthony Rendon is not the starting third baseman on opening day, again, unless he's hit 10 bombs in spring training. I think
Right.
that's a ridiculous number, but that's what I'm saying is you were going into the season counting on Anthony Rendon, and I just don't think that's a position that you want to be in if you're the Angels.
Johnny, Ken Rosenthal was on Foul Territory the other day, and he was talking about 3 former White Sox players, 2 of which are on the Angels right now. Eloy Jimenez, not on the Angels. Tim Anderson is on the Angels. Yoán Moncada is on the Angels. And he said something that caught my attention. He said, these guys didn't just lose their ability to play ball. Like, they're still really good baseball players. They just haven't been good. And a lot of the reason why is because of major injuries and some personal issues. These guys were highly respected and were just in the playoffs in 2021. Rosenthal also said that the long-term deals that they were given and the money that they were given might have been a contributing factor to why they've struggled, because they got a bit comfortable. Now, Tim Anderson was also on Foul Territory, and Tim Anderson spoke with a lot of passion. Also was not thrilled with some of the questions about getting hit in the face and why he hasn't been great and all of those. You could see some defensiveness, right? Which I'm not opposed to. I kind of am a fan of, right? Because I want some guys with a bite. And here's the reason why I bring it up, and I want your thoughts. These guys, one, are still being affirmed as good ball players, but 2, they haven't lost their ability to be really good ball players. But I think 3, we're not getting 2 specific players, Anderson and Moncada from the White Sox, because they were just terrible cast-offs from the White Sox.
Right.
Like, maybe perhaps we can help these guys improve and get better because they are hungry and they have a great desire. John, what do you think about what Ken Rosenthal said about these 2 specific players that are currently on the Angels right now?
But here's my thing with the White Sox and these guys, and it goes beyond Moncada and Jimenez and Anderson. I know that they've been hurt. I know that they've had their injuries and whatnot. Mike, I think about the rest of the team, like Lucas Giolito. And remember, like we faced the White Sox in 2021, and that was the first pitch swinging, first pitch crushing, Shohei hit that bomb, and then Jared Walsh took us to Jared and stuff. That was a tough White Sox team.
Right.
And they've gone through Pedro Grifol, and then they had what's his name that won with St. Louis,
Tony La Russa.
Tony La Russa, and his antics and his old man stuff and everything that he did, and so there has been so much dysfunction, and not to mention they lost the most games ever last season, and I know Anderson wasn't part of that. Moncada was there for 12 games of that, and Eloy's been hurt off and on. But I think of the dysfunction that has been in the White Sox system, and I think that played into a lot of what happened to this really great team that, from pitching to hitting was great up and down. I mean, they traded Cease away. They just traded Crochet away. And so I think those are wise moves, but Cease was part of that really good White Sox team. Right. And then things fell apart. And so I just think that there were so many underlying issues, from ownership to La Russa to Grifol, and now and then they bring in all the Angels cast off coaches like Matt Wise and Marcus Timms, and you guys are not doing yourselves any favors by bringing those guys in. But I do believe that under Ron Washington, I think that things can be better for these guys. But at the end of the day, I'm not looking to Tim Anderson to change the fortunes of this team.
Right.
I'm not looking to Yoán Moncada to change the fortunes of this team. What I am looking for is guys who can be a supporting cast to the guys that we're counting on. Zach Neto, Logan O'Hoppe. I want to see Joe Adell get better at the plate in terms of like average and things like that. Nolan Shawnuel, I want to see him be that high contact guy who hits for a high average and gets, driven in by guys like Mike Trout, who I want to see stay healthy. Like Tim Anderson, Moncada are not the guys that I'm really banking on to get us to the playoffs. Moncada's a piece, and he's somebody that is going to bring production to third base. And when he goes down, maybe Neto's back, and then Rengifo's at third, and Newman's at second. Like, these are the things that we have to think about. It's not so much that, oh, Moncada's got third base and this is the guy we're rolling with. No, the pieces are going to move around. This is all very temporary to me until Zach Neto comes back. And even when he does come back, maybe Moncada stays at third base because he's a switch hitter, because he can hit lefty. And then you have Rengifo at second, right? There's all these scenarios that can play out. I just think that when it comes to the production of these guys on the White Sox, it sucks. Like, I get why I think their careers kind of fell off. Again, injuries play a big part of that. At the same time, there was a really good core there that didn't have stability, didn't have a Ron Washington type to kind of keep them in line, because we've seen these guys get out of line, right? And especially somebody like Tim Anderson who getting in a fight and stuff like that, like, no good. But again, these are not the guys that I'm counting on. And I think that's why it's important to kind of step back and realize, like, these are pieces, these are bodies, these are players. And when they're good, they're good. And when they're not so good, you hope that Moncada can still be league average. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. What about you?
Yeah, and I want them to be league average because we're really relying upon our stars, the young players, to really perform. And I think in an ideal world, Christian Moore has an incredible spring, and they just have to give him a spot. And he plays, right? He plays second base, and you have Neto at short, and you have Rengifo at third base, and then your backups are Rendon and Moncada, right? And that, I think, is an ideal world. It probably won't work out that way. It'll probably be Moncada at third base and Neto at short and Rengifo at second base. But still, I like that infield, and I like the opportunity that it provides for the Halos this season. I just really appreciated Ken Rosenthal's perspective on that these guys, they didn't just stop being good ball players. Like, you can really pinpoint it was injuries that really slowed them down. And out of Anderson and Moncada, I think taking a risk on Moncada is better because he's somebody that can really just, I think, improve and be a good quality major league player for the Halos. And if he is a good quality average major league player, then it really extends this lineup. And you're right, he's not going to be somebody that the team is going to rely upon. But I do think that there's a lot of hope that he can be somebody that can help this team be a competitive team in the fight, right? It's going to take a lot for them to, I think, be a playoff team, but I think he's going to be somebody that can help them be in the fight. And he's got playoff experience, so he can perhaps help the guys know what it takes to get there.
Yeah, this is to me is like your Gio Urshela of 2023.
Yeah,
that's what this feels like to me. It's that kind of role player who makes your team better because they do a lot of average things well, and then they're at least average all around the board. I think Moncada is going to bring that averageness, that average entity. No, that sounds like a bad word. The averageness to the team. And I think I just think there's nothing wrong with this move. I'm excited for it. Somebody I wanted. Again, they got to hire me to be GM. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, that's going to be annoying. You bringing that up all the time. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. You can find his show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Let's see. Matt Moore.
Shut up.
Brandon Drury.
Shut up.
Tyler Anderson.
Shut up. I'm calling Mom.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram, whether you're watching or listening. Coming over to today's show, get in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. Mike, what do we have on deck on Tuesday's show tomorrow? I can say tomorrow again. I love it.
Johnny, it's just proof that you get really good takes here on Locked On Angels from John. Hey, tomorrow we're going to talk about the baseball metrics that have come out and what they're saying about this season, but specifically about our Halos. Are they going to be good? Do the metrics say that they're going to be good? Will they at least improve? And Johnny, I think the biggest question is, how accurate are these metrics? We're going to show you tomorrow that they're not that accurate. We're going to talk about all of that tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right. I project that we'll be talking about projections tomorrow. I love it. All right, friends, be able to come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.
I loved that the Eagles won, and I don't even like the Eagles.
Same. I hate both teams equally, but I love seeing them.